Hello?
Cop check. Hello.
Gross.
Okay, Spider-Man. I don't want to brag, but I will. I was in the Avengers.
The Avengers?
Yeah.
That's great!
Thank you.
What is that?
Wait, you don't have the Avengers?
Is that a band? Are you in a band?
Hello everybody, I'm Brevin Thompson.
And I'm Cameron Simpson.
Welcome back to my channel, and I kind of been holding this one for a while, and this is something that we've both been wanting to do for a while. Do an in-depth review for Spider-Man No Way Home, and ever since 2021, I still love this movie. I mean, in regards to live-action Spider-Man movies, this is easily the best of the bunch for obvious reasons. Because, I mean, we did see it, opening weekend, packed theaters. It gave us pretty much, like, everything that we wanted as Spidey fans. It's just, like, every, like, fan service moment that they gave us is just, like, nerdgasm to, like, infinite level.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. This is, like, it's like the Spider-Man film for every Spider-Man fan out there.
We had the Spider-Verse movies before No Way Home, and, I mean, you loved Into the Spider-Verse, I loved Into the Spider-Verse, and Across the Spider-Verse, I mean, it took it to, like, extreme lengths, because, it succeeded on what it could achieve, like, being a sequel,
Of
because
course.
it goes to, like, new heights.
Yeah.
But when it comes to No Way Home, however, I mean, when you have Tom Holland teaming up with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, it was just like, that did nothing but put, like, huge fucking smiles on our faces.
So the film starts out right where we left off in Far From Home, where Mysterio in a video blames Spider-Man for the attacks in Europe, and then he reveals to the world for the first time in cinematic history that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And that is just, like, so much to take in from the opening act. And Peter's life is completely turned upside down because of it.
And that's a major fucking understatement, because we all, like, wondered, like, ever since that cliffhanger at the end of Far From Home, where else could you possibly go from that? And thankfully they did give us answers, because shortly after this, he's taken in by the Department of Damage Control and interrogated, and he's facing, like, multiple charges because of this. But he eventually gets cleared by an interesting cameo, which is, of course, Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock. I was so happy to see Matt Murdock, and I was just like, they brought back Daredevil, and I'm just like, thank God they acknowledged the Netflix shows as officially part of the MCU, and I'm just like, thank the Lord for that. And that made me so happy, because we pretty much predicted that Matt would come in as Peter's lawyer.
Yeah, I actually figured that would be the case from the beginning, after the way the last one ended, that he would be there not as Daredevil, but as Matt Murdock, even for a brief, short of time, because Peter's in a lot of legal trouble and would need help from a good lawyer.
Because even though Peter is out of his legal troubles, he's still, like, dealing with a whole lot of shit because of the whole Spider-Man Mysterio controversy.
Yeah.
Peter, MJ, and Ned, they put in their university applications for MIT. They get rejected because of the controversy. And, of course, Peter thinks that he has no option but to go to Doctor Strange, asking him to cast a spell to make people forget that he is Spider-Man.
Strange casts the spell. The entire world, himself, his loved ones, and everyone included, will pretty much forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And because of that, when Peter figures that out, just as Strange is about to cast the spell, he makes him change the spell 6 times to try to include Ned, MJ, his Aunt May, and all his loved ones.
Yeah, because if you truly think about it, that alone, if he just said, make everybody forget that I was Spider-Man except for the people that I love and trust, because that could have fixed everything, but of course he could not keep his fucking mouth shut. But otherwise, if this didn't happen, then we wouldn't have a movie.
That's when things really start to get interesting on a lot of fronts.
Yeah, no shit. Having these actors come back to play these villains alone is just a great idea. having Willem Dafoe come back as Green Goblin, Alfred Molina coming back as Doc Ock, Jamie Foxx as Electro, Thomas Hayden Church as Sandman, as well as Risa Fiennes as Lizard, and it's just like, good lord. I mean, how, can they appeal to us like even more because of that?
Yeah, they probably could, but then again, I think we already got more than enough surprises. Doc Strange gets mad at Peter because he could have consulted with, the people at the college to try to plead his case, and then he gets kicked out. But right after that, he goes to the Brooklyn Bridge that the counselor's going to try to convince her. And then we get Doc Ock making his grand entrance, and I just couldn't believe it. When I saw him in the trailer, I was like, how? I watched him die. How is he here? And it's just...
Because they do give an explanation of why these villains are here, even though we saw them die. I mean, in the movies, because with Green Goblin, he got impaled by his glider at the end of the first one. And in Spider-Man 2, he Doc Ock drowned in the river trying to destroy his machine. So we get a pretty badass looking fight between Spider-Man and Doc Ock with Peter wearing the Iron Spider suit. And I like how Doc Ock managed to nab a piece of the nanotech within the suit, and he thinks he got himself like a little upgrade, but it proves to be his undoing in a way, because it allows Peter to like connect the suit with the arms and allows him to control them, and there's a lot of humor to that in so many ways. And of course, I mean, we get a brief cameo of Green Goblin in his original suit from the first Sam Raimi movie, even though he dons a new look later in the film.
And personally, I know how a lot of people, I'm pretty sure Brevin included, no offense, buddy, but I know how a lot of people probably felt about that suit all those years ago. And
because, I mean, you hear like a lot of people like compare him to a Power Rangers villain.
We pretty much get another scene where he's talking to the goblin persona inside the mask and uses a rock to destroy it, so it's kind of like symbolic. Out with the old and
then with the new. Yeah. And then shortly after that, after locking up Doc Ock and Doctor Strange off screen, had to deal with Lizard. And I think they improved the look of Lizard in this one compared to The Amazing Spider-Man. So Peter teams up with Strange, Ned, and MJ to track down the other villains. So he finds Electro. I mean, he appears briefly in his blue form from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and he briefly teams up with Sandman to take him down until, like, we see Electro in his human form, and later on he gets a look that resembles his comic book counterpart, which I will admit I like a lot better compared to his look in The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
I think, personally, that it's the same deal essentially with him as it was for the Goblin, that he shows up briefly in the MCU for the first time in his blue form so that we know for a fact that it's him. Even got dubstep going in the background.
Because they use some of Hans Zimmer's music.
Yeah, and
because they use like certain music from the previous Spider-Man movies into this. Because Michael Giacchino did a good job of adapting the Danny Elfman, James Horner, and Hans Zimmer themes.
Yeah, and I love that. Respect to the material. But basically, right after that, he gets one appearance in his original form as we saw him, and then, because he's in another universe with different types of electricity, it allows him to take a newer form that usually in the comics is weaker than the blue one, but at the same time is said to be more powerful.
So immediately after that, Peter finds Norman Osborn at Feast, brings him back to Sanctum Sanctorum, and that's when he finds out that each of the villains had died while fighting Spider-Man, and right before Doctor Strange was about to send them back to their own universes, he's like, maybe we can change their fate, and it leads to a pretty good-looking fight between Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, eventually moving to the mirror dimension, and he uses geometry to beat Doctor Strange.
Yeah, it's like one of the biggest memes in the internet ever since that movie came out. He's like, hey, Strange, you know what's better than magic? Math.
He uses math to be a powerful magician. So Peter tries to cure each of the villains, and That was a good moment where Norman says, "I'm something of a scientist myself." A little fan service.
Yeah, I love all the references in this film. It is just so nostalgic and so awesome.
And of course, I mean, we got Doc Ock saying, "The power of the sun in the palm of my hand."
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, really,
Yeah. So.
so much.
Yeah. So. When it comes to Peter, like making cures for each of the villains with this fabricator device, and when he makes this new inhibitor chip for Doc Ock, it of course reverts him back to his Otto Octavius self, and right when things are like looking okay, shit completely hits the fan.
Peter begins to sense that something's wrong, and after he zeroes it on Goblin being the source of the problem, they have a conversation which I think we both kind of can agree sort of mirrors the moment in Spider-Man 1 when Goblin's talking to his Goblin persona in the mirror.
Defoe pulls that off so well, and he's a lot more terrifying without the mask because that's how good his acting is.
Yeah, and the hoodie that he got from Feast along with his original battle armor I think really was quite the reference to his classic counterpart.
Yeah, because we've been wanting to see that for a while. I mean, because like you said, it gives him a look similar to his look from the comics, and of course, in his Goblin stage, he convinces the other villains that they don't need to be fixed. I mean, because they're perfect the way they are, and gods don't have to choose. We take, and of course, yeah. A fight ensues between Spider-Man and Green Goblin, and it gets brutal at times, especially with Goblin like slamming Spider-Man through multiple floors in this apartment building, and you're just like, shit. And during this fight, Green Goblin kills Aunt May, and before she dies, she tells Peter, "With great power comes great responsibility." And I know that a lot of people are probably thinking that she's replacing Uncle Ben, because they do reference that that Uncle Ben is as part of like the MCU Spider-Man story.
Yes.
And although at the same time, a lot of people could say that Tony Stark was the Uncle Ben in the MCU, but it is an interesting spin on the classic Spider-Man origin story. And I know a lot of people would say that this new trilogy has been like the ultimate new Spider-Man origin story.
Yeah, and the ironic thing is there is no origin story for him because they tried to take that out since we're supposed to know by now how Spider-Man came to be.
And because of Aunt May's death, Peter is just overwhelmed with grief and when it comes to the scene with Jameson played masterfully by J.K. Simmons, he's just great as that character. Just spouting shit about Spider-Man. It's just for me, it's just like rubbing salt on the wound. Just damn. Immediately after that, this is when the fan service is just cranked up to 11.
Yeah.
When Ned has the sling ring and he summons portals, which summon Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, and the people were losing their fucking minds when it came to this scene, and this did nothing but a huge smile on my face. I was just overwhelmed with satisfaction seeing this on screen for the first time in theaters. And so they find Tom Holland's Peter, who they nickname Peter 1, because they give they at least like give them nicknames so they don't get confused, like because Tom Holland's Peter 1, Tobey Maguire's Peter 2, and Andrew Garfield's Peter 3, so that made sense.
Yeah, and it's also a good way, I think, to distinguish between them because they're all Peter and they're all called Peter Parker, they're all Spider-Man, so you gotta use code names, I think, if you really don't want to get confused.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And of course, because of the moments between them and the chemistry that they have, I mean, it brought on a wealth of internet memes, especially in certain moments.
Yeah, they even brought the most historic meme to life.
Which is the Spider-Man point.
Yeah, did you mean him or?
Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
thing in world.
Because it works perfectly.
Yeah.
So they find Peter 1, and I mean he's of course so broken over Aunt May's death and is just wanting to give up. And the other Spideys, they're like, where? I mean, we've been in your shoes before because we lost people. I mean, Peter 2 lost Uncle Ben, and Peter 3 lost Gwen Stacy, and they convince him to not give up to honor Aunt May, which I honestly thought was beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly couldn't have imagined a better way to introduce them. And I honestly can say this has probably been like a dream come true for Tom Holland, because I found out when he first auditioned for Spider-Man all those years ago, he actually was a fan of both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man before taking up the mantle himself. And now he finally gets the chance to work with them.
Their chemistry together is just off the charts, and what makes the third act and this entire movie as a whole so great. And because of like how great their chemistry works, I mean, then of course they have like jokes, and they talk about like how Toei has organic web shooters while they have regular web shooters, and they reference Peter 2's back problems, and Andrew Garfield like cracks his back, and I'm just like, could you give me more fan service than this?
Yeah, and turns out they actually do, because right after that they mention some of the craziest villains that both of them have fought. And Peter 2 mentions, I fought an alien made out of black goo once, and then
Venom.
Yeah, and then Peter's like, oh no way, I fought an alien too, on Earth and in space.
Thanos.
Yeah, he was purple. And then Andrew Garfield's like, I want to fight an alien. He goes, I'm lame compared to, like, I fought a Russian guy in a rhinoceros machine. Self-talk that maybe we should go through, because you're amazing. Just to take it in for a minute. You are amazing. You are amazing. Would you say it? And he goes, nah, I kind of needed to hear that. Thank you. And I gotta say, like, thank you, because I have been trying to tell people ever since Andrew Garfield first took up the mantle that I get he's probably maybe not the best Spider-Man that we've had, but this movie to me is living proof that he is not a bad Spider-Man.
He just had bad scripts. So the three Spideys fight the villains while they're on the Statue of Liberty. I mean, because they're doing like some construction on it, putting the Captain America shield on it.
Yeah.
Which I thought was an odd thing to do, really. But so they fight the villains. Toby cures Sandman while they're trying to cure Electro, and Doc Ock even steps in and helps, which I thought was great. After Peter 1 cures Lizard, I do like the brief moments, the brief interactions that Andrew Garfield has with Electro and Toby with Doc Ock, and especially with the scene between Tobey Maguire and Alfred Molina. Is just like, I think that was just like a great reunion scene between those actors. And when they, and I won't lie, I do like the moment where he asks like how is he, and Toby's like, trying to do better. So Doctor Strange steps in, and he's like, I'm impressed that you managed to give them a second chance, but this has to end. And of course that's when Green Goblin shows up. He fucks up the box with a pumpkin bomb, and MJ is about to fall to her death, and I'm just like, they better not do this again. And especially right when he snatches Peter 1 away. I remember thinking, shouldn't Andrew Garfield catch her instead? And it happened. I was just like, I was so happy when they put that in the film, because it gave him a moment of redemption and some much needed closure after Gwen Stacy's death.
And I actually learned that it turns out that it was actually John Watts' own idea to have Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker be the one to catch Peter 1's MJ instead of our Peter Parker. And I really thought that that was great, because to me, that just really gave him, like Brevin said, some much needed closure.
Yeah, because The Amazing Spider-Man 2, ended very sadly for his character. And because of, like, what happens in this film, part of me wants them to go back to the Raimi verse and the Webb verse and have, like, separate movies with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield together. I'm just like, do it. Make it better than the previous installments. Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, because if they did, I would be more than happy to see those.
Me too, and actually they really could do that if they wanted to.
Peter 1 starts beating the shit out of Green Goblin.
Feels like every time I watch that fight, it feels sort of like a mirrored version of what happened with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man back in the Sam Raimi era, and it's just unbelievable how similar they can really be.
Yeah, but but Peter 1, he's out for blood after after Green Goblin killed Aunt May, and he comes so close to going to kill the Goblin with his own glider, but Peter 2 steps in and stops him. And when it comes to the moment where the Goblin stabs Toby, I'm just like, no, we had him for only a few minutes, and you're just gonna kill him off. Are you really gonna piss me off this early?
Yeah, I'll admit they had me too for a second, but the good news is we find out a few minutes later, after Peter uses this distraction to cure the Goblin, that apparently Peter 2 is okay because it's non-fatal, as he's been stabbed before. So
because of the Goblin fucking up the box, the spell is out of control, and there's tears throughout the multiverse, and it starts pulling in people that know Peter Parker, Spider-Man, and we see certain references to certain Spider-Man characters like Black Cat, Kraven, Rhino, and Scorpion, and all that shit. Which I thought was a nice touch, really.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting, just all those people coming through, because Doc Strange said earlier in his fight with Spider-Man that in the multiverse there are an infinite number of people who know Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
So Peter 1 thinks that the best option was for him to for Doctor Strange to cast a new spell to make everybody forget about Peter Parker, and of course this would have severe consequences in his own life, because everybody in his life that knows and loves him, they would have no memory of him whatsoever. And he says his final goodbyes to his two counterparts, and eventually MJ and Ned, and it's very heartbreaking for him, and as well as the audience. He's been working so hard to put his life back together and make things better for his friends and family, but he goes through a lot of shit along the way.
Yeah, and now because of that, this is kind of where he ends up.
And after the spell is complete, because everybody has forgotten that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, Peter goes to the diner where MJ works at, and he has a moment to think about whether or not he should help MJ and Ned remember who he is.
Also, when he notices MJ's head wound, it reminds him of how dangerous being around him can be. So he makes the right choice at the time and decides not to do it.
Later on, he gets his own apartment, and all that's missing is Mr. Dickovich, I swear to God. You see Peter wearing an actual comic-looking Spider-Man suit.
Yeah.
And, even though we get brief glimpses of it in this movie, I do like that Insomniac decided to allow us to use that suit in Spider-Man 2. I'm just I enjoy playing that game with that suit every second that I'm playing that game.
Yeah, to be honest, for me, that was the first time I truly got a good look at that suit in its entirety. Apparently, they decided to go with the name for it being the new red and blue suit, and I really think it fits it rather well.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, and and having him like swing through New York during Christmas time, and it's just like it was a great way to end the movie. But in the mid-credit scenes, they show Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock, like talking to this waiter about the events in the MCU, and him preparing to track down Spider-Man, but he gets zapped back to his universe, which I thought was because they show him like being pulled into the MCU, and Venom let there be carnage.
Yeah, I admit that was a bit odd, and I was a bit worried about whether or not he was going to be in this film and what role he would play, because I honestly thought that if they had continued going down the road that I thought they were going to go.
Yeah, and especially with all the villains. I mean, I was given the impression that this would be like a multiverse Sinister Six movie.
Yeah, but at the same time, even if that was the case, I honestly don't know if I would have thought that would have been a good idea. Because to me, if they had decided to do it that way, which I'm glad they did not, but for me, they probably would have just done a repeat of what happened with Spider-Man 3 back in 2007, being a rush story with almost no reason for him to be there at all, except for the fact that he saw him on TV, and now he wants to eat him.
But, I mean, he gets transported to his universe and leaves a piece of the symbiote there. So I'm just like, where did it go from here? I mean, will Peter get the black suit in Spider-Man 4? Will he get in Secret Wars? I don't know.
Well, it is possible that Secret Wars could be where they want to go with this, because I found out that's actually the original comic where Spider-Man first got the symbiote in the first place.
But overall, we love this movie. Yeah. And in terms of Spider-Man movies, live-action Spider-Man movies, this is easily best of the bunch. If you haven't seen it at this point, do yourself a favor. Watch No Way Home. It's fucking great.
And watch Far From Home first, of course, so that you can kind of get the gist of what's really going on here. Because I feel like watching them both together really plays an essential part in the whole thing.
Yeah, it truly does. Yeah, it truly does. But I want to give a big thank you to Cameron for collaborating with me on this video. And guys, thank you so much as always for watching. Looking forward to doing more videos really soon. And if you want my thoughts on old or new movies, of course, you know where to find me.